What if the source of your greatest pain is also someone close to you? Maybe it's a parent or a sibling or a partner, someone you didn't just love but needed the most. And maybe the pain was obvious. Maybe it was yelling, fear, a house where you always knew something was about to happen. You could feel it in your body before anything started. But maybe nothing like that ever happened. There was no screaming or violence. It was just this suffocating pressure to be who they needed you to be, where you became the one holding everything together, reading the room, managing their emotions. And to make it even more complicated, it wasn't bad all the time. There were moments where it felt like love, where things were okay, just enough to make you question everything else. And there's a name for what this does to a person: relational trauma. More than half the population are carrying some version of it, even if they wouldn't use that language to describe it. And this is where Dr. Frank Anderson enters the conversation. By every measure, he's one of the world's leading experts on trauma. He's trained at Harvard, and over the past 30 years, he sat with thousands of people inside this exact reality, helping them understand what happened to them and why it still feels the way it does. And what makes him rare is that this isn't something he's just studied. It's something he's experienced firsthand. He grew up in a home where he was in constant physical danger, which is why he can speak to this with a level of clarity and precision that very few people can. If you're new to Mighty Pursuit, we exist to help you make sense of the whole person: mind, body, and spirit. Not as vague wellness cliches, but as deeply interconnected parts of your everyday experience. In today's episode, we zoom in on mental health and how our closest relationships can leave a lasting imprint on it. Because relational trauma doesn't end cleanly. Sometimes the person is still in your life, and maybe they've never acknowledged what they've done, never once apologized, which means you're still carrying the damage while they keep living like nothing happened. Dr. Anderson doesn't simplify any of that. He doesn't offer easy forgiveness frameworks or tidy resolution arcs. He goes into all of it: the grief, the anger, the impossible complexity of loving someone who hurt you. And that's what makes this one of the most honest conversations we've ever had on the show. So let's begin. So Frank, I want to begin with a specific moment. You wrote about this in your memoir, but your father chasing you around the house. So just take me back there. What was he saying and what was happening in that moment?
It's so weird. Even you just saying that brings it up. Like, you're like, oh, I want to talk about that moment. So I'm like, okay, my nervous system is already starts feeling it. And the moment is like me running through the house, but there was what happened before always, right? When you say take me to the moment, I'm going up the stairs from the living room up into my bedroom because I have to get to my bedroom and lock that door before he gets me. Like that is like the hyper-focus moment. There was a lock on the door with a button, and I had to slam the door and hit the button so that he wouldn't get me. So that I remember. But it was like, I don't know if there was this book called Soul Murder. And I always was like, he's not going to murder my soul. I don't know why I had that moment in my, like, he's not going to get me. He's not going to get me. But anything would shift him on a dime. Like the way you're looking at me is like a way a normal person looks at me. And then all of a sudden I see the eyes, the eyes shift, and it's like, okay, motherfucker, I'm going for you. Like, so the thing that I was vigilant about was his eyes, because when the eyes had that look, then I started running. Right. So it was like that. So I was vigilant, super vigilant. And did I say something? Did I not say something? Did I do something? Oftentimes in retrospect, I think I was speaking up because I was the person in the family that spoke up. I was like protecting my siblings, protecting my mother. So I'd say, that's not true. Or I don't want to go to Kathy and Philly's house or something like this. And so you never knew which one of those moments would cause the shift in the eye. And the eye was like, I'm going to kill you. Like, that's what the eye was. People talk about if looks could kill.
Yeah.
That's what it was. It was totally that. And so then I just started fucking running. Started running. We could be in the basement. I'd tear upstairs into the kitchen, around to the dining room table, and then up to my bedroom. But I always had to get to my bedroom. And I remember the stairs the most because there was like it was a split level house, so there was like 10 stairs, and you had to take them as quick as possible, like 2 at a time or 3 at a time, grab onto the railing, and then running down that hallway, slamming the door and getting the button. I don't understand how I always did it. I don't know why he never got me in those moments. So I was vigilant enough. I caught it quick enough because he didn't get me in those moments. There was not a memory of missing the bedroom door and locking it.
What were the moments that he did get you then?
There were moments that he did get me, and that I was fuzzy about that before, but those were the moments, and I don't know. So it's so weird. This is what dissociation is about, because those moments, like, I guess I remember all the moments that I got away, slammed the door, and then watched the hinges moving when he
Yeah.
would bang on the door, right? But there were moments that I guess I didn't do that, or maybe it wasn't the running through the house moments, because the clearest moments of when he got me was this, like, cover your face, cover your face. That I remember. So I guess I don't remember what happened beforehand because I was dissociated or whatever, but I remember the blows on the back and cover your face, cover your face. Your back is strong. Don't let him get your face. So there were, guess I wasn't 100% effective all the time,
No.
but they're fragmented. They're fragmented. And, like, I remember moments when he did get me. And then I remember the moments, I've never talked about this before. I remember the moments where I got away, and interestingly enough, the moments that I got away were just like 100. It was like over and over and over and over again. Those were very repetitive. And interestingly enough, this was after I was in therapy where no hitting was allowed.
Mm.
Okay. Because the reason I went to therapy at 6 years old was a whole nother story. But when I went to therapy, so did my parents. And the new rule was no hitting, only grounding. But all of this stuff happened after the no hitting rule. So maybe he didn't get me. He was just chasing me because he wasn't supposed to hit me anymore. I don't know.
What led to that to begin with? What activated him, and why was he doing that to begin with?
That's the $1 million question. I couldn't really answer that. All my life I thought it was because I'm a horrible person. It's me. I'm bad. I'm wrong. But it could have been anything. And now as a parent, it's very interesting. Parents lose it, all kinds of reasons. They lose it to different degrees. Sometimes you lose it because you're exhausted and you're tired. Sometimes you lose it because your boss just yelled at you. Sometimes you lose it because your kids are driving you crazy. Like, there's a lot of reasons why people aren't resourced and they lose it. So I couldn't tell you what caused him to do what he did when he did it, why this moment was different than the last moment. But what I can tell you is that it was always in my mind my fault. That's what I knew, because he didn't say, honey, I'm so sorry. I had a really stressful day at work. Hey, honey, I'm so sorry. Like, the bank called me because we didn't have enough money in the bank account, and I'm sorry or hey, I'm so sorry I had 3 shots and beers instead of 2 shots and beers. So he never gave me an explanation. So it was always, it's me, it's me, it's me. So I could never tell you. And the thing that I will say, and I wrote about this in my memoir, To Be Loved, because most of my life, I thought I knew he hated me, or I felt he hated me. Whatever he felt was his own thing. And as I was conscious and growing up, I thought it was because I was gay. Like, that was always like, oh, that's why. He couldn't tolerate that. But then when I found out that the hitting started when I was a baby in the crib, that was a moment as an adult. I was like, oh, it's not because of that. So that was a moment I shifted from, it's not my fault, it's about him. Because if you're hitting a baby in the crib, it's not because he's gay. What baby's gay? And that was the first moment that I was like, oh, maybe it isn't about me. Maybe it's about him. And so that was kind of a relief. Like, he was a dysregulated guy. Like, maybe he had bipolar disorder that wasn't diagnosed. Alcoholism was totally an issue. Overstressed, overworked. Like, I got clear when I learned about that it was about him and not about me. So that's where I stopped taking responsibility for what happened to me.
How did this shape your relationship with him, like during and after you growing up into your teens and everything else?
I was a kid who knew right from wrong. Most kids know right from wrong. I never gave in to his story. I always fought it. I was like, I know better. I know what you're doing. I am not going to buy your narrative. So as much as I blamed myself, I also knew he was wrong. So I carried resentment towards him for most of my life. I really did. I'm like, I am not going to buy. I know this is wrong and I know this is your fault. It was a weird split. Part of me blamed myself for sure. My fault, my fault. But there was another place in me. This is where I feel resilience and tenacity around this is wrong. You shouldn't do this. You can't kill my soul. And that's where I was like, never forgave him. I always held him responsible for what he did, even though he never took responsibility. So it was a weird paradox, honestly. I knew, kids know, they kind of know, but then when you're stuck in something, you don't have any choice, right? So it was weird. It was a weird paradox of like knowing, and because there was always a distance between us, always, right? He liked my brother. My brother was more like him. My brother was a guy's guy. It was so clear that he was my dad's favorite. Like that was so obvious. My mother always tried to tell me that wasn't true, but it was just so obvious. And he never liked me, but I also
Yeah.
never liked him, and I spent most of my life hating him, really.
Yeah, I think that's a really important context to open up the conversation because, a lot of people recognize you as, world-renowned trauma expert, Harvard trained, you were just here with Bessel van der Kolk and Body Keats a Score. But I think what makes you rare is this experience is the topic of trauma, and specifically relationship trauma, is so near and dear to your story. You experienced it. And I think a lot of people listening, while they might not have had that exact experience of being physically abused, or maybe they did, but I think most people probably have a moment or a series of moments that involve someone that's close to them.
Yeah.
And we're living with that in ways that we don't fully understand, which I think is interesting about what you just said about that part of you that was like intuitively like, this is wrong.
Yes.
And then the other part of like, maybe this is my fault. So when the person who hurts you is also someone you love, someone that you need, what makes that so uniquely complex?
It's horrible. This is what I'll say, and I don't know if I've ever told you this before, but I recently did a workshop with Elizabeth Smart. Some people know her, some people don't. She was 14 years old. She was abducted from her house in Utah, taken up into the mountains, and kind of brutally abused for 9 months, right? She had the awareness. She's like, these were evil people. She said, the people that loved me, I knew loved me. And these people that came in the middle of the night and took me right out of my house, I knew they were evil and I knew they were bad. And when I heard her say that, I was like, that is a difference. If a stranger abducts you, it's not that it's easy or it's not non-traumatizing, but it's a very different experience if you as a kid, like, oh, this is an evil person, this is a bad person, they're doing bad things to me. Excuse me, second time I'm saying, what really fucks you up is when these people are supposed to love you, you love them and you need them for survival, and simultaneously they're yelling and screaming and hitting or sexually abusing you. That is way too complicated for kids to hold. That's complicated for adults to hold. So when you have that confusion of like, I love them, I need them. And I want to say this also, Matthew, like, nobody's all bad. I remember moments when I was playing baseball because I was supposed to play baseball because it was a boy sport. And my dad came to my game and I got a double and a single. Okay. The only hit I got all season long, but my dad was there. He was there and he was so proud of me. Like I had moments of pure joy and amazing love with him and for him. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's confusing as hell for a kid. I had more bad moments than good for sure, but nobody has only all bad moments. I don't think that exists. Maybe it does. I don't want to speak for other people, but that's really confusing. You're like, gosh, he's being nice to me. He bought me a baseball catcher's mitt. He was playing ball with me in the backyard. He cares about me, right? So you have those moments, and then you're chased through the house and called a cocksucking motherfucking son of a bitch.
Yeah.
So confusing. Like, how do you make sense of that?
Yeah.
You don't. That's why you split it off.
Yeah. I'd imagine also this could look, there's so many different relationships
Yes.
that there's a parent, there's a sibling, there's a best friend, there's
Yes.
a romantic partner.
Ugh.
But it does seem like the common thread between all of those people are like these are people who you're supposed to be able to trust,
Yeah.
who are supposed to love you, but then you feel sort of chronically dysregulated or unsafe or unseen around them. And so are most people who have gone through this, are they actually conscious of the harm, or is awareness something that comes, like the full awareness, something that comes much later?
I wasn't at all. I wasn't aware until probably my second year of residency at Harvard. I had no real awareness. I really didn't.
All you just had was that intuition that
I had that
something.
intuition. He's wrong. He's wrong. I'm never going to let him get my soul. Like I had that. But I also was like, go to therapy, play with boy toys, be like a boy, and look at your uncle, act like him. So I had this like, I'm wrong, he's wrong. I have to act like other people, but I didn't know why. I didn't know that this was, that was my childhood. I didn't know that that was so abnormal. How am I supposed to know relative to other people, right? The only thing I knew was I went to other people's house and they ate ham out of a can and Parmesan cheese out of a container because we were this Italian ethnic family. We would never have food like that. So when I went to somebody else's house, they had like American food and we had octopus and squid and all this kind of other stuff. You know what I mean? So that was the only difference when I went to somebody else's house because nobody saw what happened behind closed doors in my house. I didn't see what happened behind closed doors in theirs. So I didn't know that mine was so different than theirs. Even my cousins would say to me when I wrote the book, they're like, Frankie, I had no idea this was happening. Like my cousins, right? Because when people came to the house, we put smiles on and we said hello and we kissed everybody because that's what Italians do. You kiss your uncles and you kiss your aunts and like things were great because we knew how to present well. So most people don't know what goes on behind closed doors. This really pisses me off about social media.
Yeah.
It drives me crazy around how many people present these fabulous lives and none of us knows the reality of what happens. Like you can present anything you want now. We were doing that back then. It's just the world didn't see it.
Yeah.
Right. So my cousins did not know. One of my cousins was like, Frankie, I wish I would have known. I would have done something. And we would get together every Sunday for pasta dinner.
It's kind of scary how much it could live in the shadows. I mean, and you see public figures where they have these supposedly like fabulous marriage, and then all of a sudden they like randomly get divorced, and then it came out that there was abuse and this was happening and so much tension. And you're like, what? Like they were just like posting like all these nice little photos on social media, and
It's a survival strategy. That's what I call it. Because if I told my cousins what was happening at my house, my dad would beat the shit out of me worse.
Yeah.
Like I knew enough about that.
Yeah.
I knew the family code was present well. So, people do that. You learn how to survive whatever you need to do.
So you've talked about how there's really 3 categories of people who arrive in your office, and it usually comes down to like where they are in their own awareness of their own trauma. So who are those 3 categories of people?
Here's what I would say. Most people have no awareness. Okay. You live your life, you have your behaviors, your life is good in some moments and really messed up in other moments. And you have no understanding or awareness about why that actually is. Most of us are living like that until things get bad enough and you're like, hey, this is a problem. Hey, maybe I am drinking too much. Hey, I think I'm overworking. My kids are complaining all the time. Hey, I'm really too focused on exercise. This is becoming a problem. So you start getting awareness of your behavior, and that the awareness is like, oh, okay, maybe this is a problem. I've lost my fourth job. This is my fifth relationship. Why do I keep attracting this kind of guy? Right. So at some point, your life becomes problematic enough that you're like, hey, what's up? And so then you start gaining awareness. Right. So that's one category of people.
Mhm.
And most, at 98%, I don't know, not 98, I think that's too strong. 80% of the population lives with, are clueless that their behavior is related to their unresolved trauma. Most of us do not know that.
Yeah.
Right? That's the vast majority of people. And then there's people with awareness who like get work, get help, do the coaching program, do the 5 things that social media tells you to do, and are working on their stuff, but they're not working on it in a way that's actually effective. So they keep trying, and nothing gets better. And so they blame themselves or they feel bad about themselves because they have awareness that something happened, but the world is not clear about what to do when and where to go. So these people are kind of constantly, seeking the best the wellness trend. Oh, I'm going to use magnesium threonate because that's going to allow me to sleep. Or, oh, if I only take anti-inflammatory food. So there's these people that are searching
Yeah.
for answers and they don't really know because the information is not organized in a clear way. And then there are other people who really, just kind of repeat it over and over and over again after they've done a lot of work. Okay. I'm going to put myself in that category right
Yeah.
now. I have done so much work over my life, so much work. I've been in therapy more than I've been out of therapy, at my age. And this is a realization that's coming to me clearly now after all these years. Like, I should have been healed by now. If I ain't healed, you can't heal, right? Because I've done everything. I've done analytic treatment. I've done IFS. I've done sensory motor. I've done EMDR. I've done all the stuff and I'm in therapy. I was in a therapy session this morning before this podcast, my own therapist. So I'm a therapy lifer. And this category is something I'm becoming more clear about, is that we actually never heal our trauma. You're never done. And I think that's kind of sobering, but that's a reality that I'm getting very clear on. And so are some of my colleagues aware of this, that there's no done in this journey. There is a evolution, a learning, a rising. It happens again, an evolution, a learning, and a rising.
Yeah.
So that happens. And I'm not saying that to be depressing, like, oh my God, I'll never be healed. You can get a lot better. But this idea you'll be done, I think we've been falsely given that information. And I kind of want people to know that's not the goal. The end goal is not 10 sessions of EMDR and then you're going to be cured of your trauma, because that's not how it works.
So regardless of where somebody's at in their awareness, like full
Yes.
awareness, I've been talking about my mother for 20 years, or, someone who's just listening to this and they're starting to have some
Yes.
revelations to your story. What would you say the cost is of leaving relational trauma unaddressed? And what does that actually look like in someone's daily life?
Yeah, that's so painful, to be with people who don't do their work and pretend that they do or don't address things. I mean, I've been doing this work since 1992. I've been doing this a long time, and there are some wildly messed up people that live these superficial lives and are having affairs on the side, are cheating on their partners, are, drugging and drinking in secret. They're living these crazy compartmentalized lives where they look on the surface like, I'm thinking of some of the people that we're all watching and following and learning about life from. I've treated some of those people. And what happens to them in their personal life is a shit show. It really is. And it pains me that we have the capacity as humans to compartmentalize, to look as if, to teach other people how to do it. And if we don't do our own work, we have just as much messed up lives, if not worse, than other people. And that happens a lot, and it's painful. So people don't understand sometimes how they got there, but it's years and years and years of suppressing it and pushing it away and try something else and suppressing it and pushing it away. I'm not a person that gets a lot of back pain. But I had back pain a couple years ago, and it was like so immobilizing. I was like, oh, this is what everybody complains about. Back pain's so horrible. I go to the chiropractor, and he says, it's not just because you picked up the sock the wrong way. He's like, there's a whole bunch of series of things that go
Yeah.
into that moment. Same thing when you crack a tooth.
Yeah.
It's not the popcorn kernel, people. It's all the stuff, all the stressors that happen to predate it, and then the moment happens when things fall apart. That's more common for people, is all the ways, no, forget it, get out of this relationship, just move forward, get a different job, let's move. Many of us are constantly moving away from it instead of leaning in toward it.
Yeah.
Right? And it's that leaning in toward it, which is painful, but that's what prevents a messed up life. Like it's interesting. I have a really good social life, and I love a lot of my friends, and I can see now, because of where I'm at, not healed, but I can see people at different levels of operating. I was like, oh, so and so, love them dearly. They really have a bad relationship with food. They're really eating their feelings and not dealing with them. Wow, so and so's really drinking a lot. Their family life isn't so good, and they're not aware that their family life isn't so good because they're on the couch drinking 6 beers every night. Oh, so and so is not actually spending time with their kids. They're shipping them off to one camp after another after another. These are what I see in people who are living a seemingly normal life, but who aren't really addressing what is going on inside in a way to make their life cleaner and clearer and actually more fulfilling.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple minutes ago friends and, siblings and all this kind of stuff. You don't have childhood trauma, not address it, and just have one area of your life that's not good. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, but it doesn't happen that way. You have an okay relationship. It's kind of numb, and you have sex once a month or once a week. Good enough. Your friendships are kind of superficial. There's nobody really there for you when the going gets tough. You can't actually be vulnerable with somebody, right? Your work relationships are okay, good enough. You go out, you have some drinks, and you're fine. So it hits all spheres of your life. So if you're going to have a life with total denial,
Yeah.
that's you're going to see everywhere. If you're really going to commit to honesty and authenticity with yourself,
Yeah.
you're going to have a different life. So it's like, kind of look at yourself. And I really say this not to be judgmental, because I am not the pillar of health. Like, listen to my story. Like, I have had a messed up story, cheated on my wife, was even married to a woman. Like, I was really living an inauthentic life in a big way for many, many years.
Yeah.
So this is not like the guy on the top of the hill preaching. Like, that's not who I am. But I am somebody who is always, for whatever reason, doing the work, doing the work, doing the work. I mean, we even talked about, you're like, oh, Frank, coming to my house, and you're like, wow, you have such a wonderful family. I'm like, yeah, we do. But guess what? It was not always like that. We worked our ass off. We struggled, looked at ourselves, looked at the way we were parenting, made a lot of changes in our life. And that's the thing that I think, that's one of my big messages, Matthew, is like, this work pays off in the quality of your life. If your life is not where you want it to be, the solution is not changing things that way. The solution is going back and looking at what's driving the train, really, but it's painful. And not a lot of people want to do that.
Well, I want to help people in that because I think
Yes.
there could be a lot of revelations in this conversation, and make them truly understand what they're dealing with and feel it fully
Yeah.
in the sense that you can. So we talked about friends, siblings, parents,
Yeah.
romantic partners. Let's examine each relationship specifically. Started with the most foundational one, which is parents. And so when we talk about parental harm, from my estimation, it seems like it shows up potentially in four ways. So there's like the overt harm, which you went through,
Yeah.
the hitting and everything else. Then there's kind of like this covert harm,
Yeah.
which sort of you also went through, but like it's not as obvious. It's not as obvious that like, oh,
Yeah.
they're punching, they're hitting me,
Yeah.
but it was deeply dramatic in its own way. Then you have like unpredictability in the household. And then, the category that doesn't get nearly enough attention, which is like the bystander parents, the supposedly healthy one through all this and watching the house be chaotic. So the overt harm, the kind you experienced yourself, physical abuse, verbal abuse, and then for other people, sexual abuse.
Yes.
What does the home environment feel like when there's just so much of that going on?
Just even hearing you say that, my body is like, get out, danger, danger, get out. Like that's when you experience that, you do everything in your power to not feel that because it's so overwhelming. And then you have all these different coping mechanisms to get away. This conflict avoidant. I'm so conflict avoidant because of the aggressive violence that I experienced makes me avoid at all costs. I mean, this is one of the things that's important for people to know. You can have different adaptations depending on who you are. I could be like, okay, let's go, motherfucker. Like I could be a fighter, or I could be an avoider, or any version in between. And for me, physical and verbal abuse ended up for me to be an avoider. Conflict is so hard for me, and I will avoid it at all costs. Even yesterday, I had to address a conflict, and it took me like weeks to get the courage up after all the work that I've done, right? So different people do different things. Like I talk about this, my brother kind of gives me permission. Like he grew up in the same house as I did, but didn't have the same experience, really. He was not abused in the same way for whatever reason. But he was in a pretty violent, chaotic household also, and he witnessed a lot. He experienced a fair amount on his own too, not the same degree as me. But he is like, he carries a gun all the time, everywhere. Okay. And he will protect himself and nobody's going to fuck with him. That's a different adaptation. Do you know what I mean? Like my one sister is just like, caretaker. She just will do nothing else but caretake people in the hopes that they'll be nice to her. Do you know what I mean?
No.
So you can't really categorize one type of abuse creates one type of person. Doesn't really work like that. It's like what this abuse does, and then all the different ways each of our souls, our temperament, chooses to react in that moment. It's really complicated. If you talk about the like there's the overt, there's the covert, right? There's also neglect. Like if you think about neglect, that's the other side of the spectrum. Like no presents, no food. Nobody's waking up with me to go to school. There's nothing here. Like the absence of everything. Like we don't talk enough about neglect in my experience. That creates a whole different scenario. It's like, I'm that horrible that my mother doesn't even care to get up and give me breakfast. I don't even have clothes. There's no toilet paper to wipe the shit off of me when I go to the bathroom. I really must not be worth anything. So there's all these layers of neglect. Parents so drunk and hungover. You either take care of yourself or you take care of your parent. Come on, mom, let's wake up. Let's wake up, mom. You got to get me to school. You have to drive me. Kids become parentified, right? So you want to look at what was the type of abuse And then what were the different adaptations that we all pick? And I think it's fascinating why some people become caretakers and some people become, go into the military.
Yeah.
Don't think that's not a trauma response, or become an ER doctor or become a policeman, right? Those are kind of trauma adaptations. I'm going to be in charge of dangerous situations now,
That's
So
interesting. Yeah. I never thought about
you
that.
haven't thought about that? I mean, I've worked with a lot of ER nurses, ER doctors, policemen, firemen, paramedics, lots of trauma histories. It's an adaptation. It's like, I'm going to be the one in charge this time. I'll be saving the hurt people. I don't want to be a hurt person.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, what it makes me think about is like, so, speaking about parents and growing up in a home where you have no choice
Yeah,
but to be in that environment,
you got it.
that seems like it creates a fundamental loss of control.
Well, but that's what the survival strategies are. All those behaviors are your attempt to control a situation that you're stuck in, that you don't have any capacity to get out of. So you have to do something, right? So you got to figure out something. I decided to get up and get A's so I can get out of the house. Like, that was my main coping mechanism, was my intelligence. And, get good grades, get out, get out, get out. Like, used to, as a kid, I used to fantasize about being an adult. Like, I wasn't like, oh, good, let's play with the baseball in the backyard. Isn't this fun? Let's go and, let's go to the ice cream store, blah, blah, blah. I was like, I can't wait to get out. I can't wait to get out. When I'm an adult, I can leave. So different people really do different things, as adaptations, because you are stuck as kids. There was a show, a movie, I don't even know if you remember, you're probably too young, but it was called Irreconcilable Differences. And it was when a kid divorced his parents. It was kind of a funny movie, and it was a great concept. It was like, you guys are not doing what you need to do. And he went to a judge, and it was kind of a funny movie, but it was like, kids don't have the option to get out of things that aren't healthy. They're stuck. So they have to do something. They have to do something to manage it. And you typically do what you have access to, what's in your environment, and you use whatever you have at your disposal. I run, to this day, I've been running. It's not coincidental that I used to run through my house to get away from my father. And to this day, now I run for health, but running was a coping mechanism that saved my life. And I'm still running. I run 3 times a week. We pick a lot of different things based on what we have access to. This is substance use. So powerful. It's like such a good get me away from this moment drug. Any substances usually take you away from the moment. Like, oh my God, you know how wonderful alcohol is for people? Because it's the thing that they have access to because their parents are drunk, but it takes them away from their situation.
And that can start early, like 12.
Really, 12 is not so early. It can start earlier than that.
Well, earlier?
Absolutely. Work with kids. Yeah. Vaping, like, kids have access to this stuff way, way early. Go work with any kids who are in school systems. You'll hear about it.
Now, you mentioned the disassociation thing off the top about your own story. I mean, just the horror of, I know somebody's going to come in my bed and sexually abuse me.
Yeah.
And it's that time now at night. Or
Totally.
I know I'm going to get punched in the face.
Yes, that's right.
Where does the mind and brain and all of that, so where does it go?
Well, first of all, I'll say it's stored in the body, and you disconnect from your body because it's overwhelming. If you're sitting with anticipation, it's intolerable to sit with that anticipation. The experience is held in your body, and then your mind helps you leave and disconnect so you don't have to be in that experience, because you're sitting there listening to the footsteps, you vigilantly waiting for it to happen. It's really intolerable. And so thank God we have the psychic capacity to leave. This is what dissociation does. It helps us get out so we don't have to be present for it. So many times I've worked with women, not only women, but talk about, I was up in the corner of that room watching that poor little girl get abused, right? That's a beautiful coping mechanism to help somebody not experience what the body's experiencing. So we have this capacity to split our mind and our body. Um, oh my God, I just remember, I just, I was, I was the first time I consciously dissociated was when we were driving on a trip from our home in Chicago to Florida. It was like one of those 20-hour car rides, 6 people in the car. We had a Folgers coffee can where you peed in because you were never allowed to stop because you had to pee, right? And we were stuck in this car for so long. And I remember it was the first time I was like, looked out the window and I was like, I can leave this. I can leave. I know how to leave. And I would stare out the window for like hours at a time. And then I'd come back into my body and I'd be like, oh, and my brother'd be yelling and my mother'd be doing something else and my sisters would be whatever. And I was like, it was the first time I consciously dissociated, but most of us just automatically leave because it's overwhelming. Do you know what I mean? But that was the first time in my life I was like, I have access to something here. I don't have to stay in this car for the next 24 hours and deal with all the shit that happens here. So thank God our minds and our psyches have the capacity to leave things that are intolerable.
Hmm.
It's a great mechanism for survival.
Now, you also said about your father that at some level, you recognize what he was doing. It was wrong, but for the average child, the average person that you've treated, or even if they reflect on it later, like, how do they make sense of being physically violated by the person that they need the most? Like, what is the thing that's going through their mind about that?
You don't you you survive. You don't have the capacity to figure something like, you know what I mean? It's like fight, flight, freeze, submit. Those trauma responses are trauma responses. Like it's like, I got to get the fuck out of here. Or what am I going to do to protect my body? Like you don't have the capacity to move through rational thinking and figure out a plan. When it's happening, you are surviving. That's one of the things that is very striking. So you can't, like in the aftermath, maybe you get angry and you're like, I'm never going to be vulnerable again, or I'm never going to talk to him again. Like in the Monday morning quarterback, you're trying to figure things out. But in those moments, there's no capacity. You survive
Yeah.
and you do whatever you can to survive. I don't think I've ever said this publicly before, but I never had a fantasy for most of my life, a sexual fantasy ever, because it was so unsafe to allow my mind to wander. I had to be vigilant and I had to pay attention, and fantasy, you have to be safe enough to fantasize. Let your mind wander. Think about this girl, think about this guy, or think about a scenario. That requires safety. I never had a wet dream. I never had a fantasy. And I remember being in therapy as an adult and they'd ask me about my fantasy life. I'm like, what are you talking about? Like fantasy? No, there's no safe that my life was not safe enough to fantasize. So this is survival mode, and this is what cortisol in the body. Like we know a lot about the physiology of being in stress,
Yeah.
being in stress. Nadine Burke-Harris, a friend and colleague of mine who does the ACE study work, she works with these kids who have these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 different types of trauma. And that's why they show medical problems, physical problems, emotional problems are off the charts for these people who have these kinds of trauma histories.
Mhm.
They cost the medical community millions and millions of dollars. I was just with Gabor Mate a couple weeks ago, same thing. Gabor's like, most of our medical illness is rooted in unresolved trauma. So the body does store it. Your psyche does whatever it can to protect yourself from it. And if you don't process this at some point, it's going to have an effect.
So what happens in adulthood then? You
Look,
grow up, you turn 18, you leave the house.
yeah, and you reenact your shit. You get angry, you reenact, or you shut down, and you develop a bunch of physical problems. Or, I mean, I don't think it's surprising that autoimmune conditions are rampant right now. That's because of the unresolved trauma, largely. Immunology wasn't even a thing for me in medical school. We didn't even talk about immunology. Now it's like all your anti-inflammatory foods and diets, because we're seeing the effects of stress, and the amount of the fact that what stress does to the body and to the psyche.
Yeah.
Like it will, you just can't get away from it. I'm sorry to tell people, you just can't get away from it. You do for a certain period of time. I mean, I'm a perfect example. All right, I pushed it away, got married to a woman, went to medical school, and like at 32 was when I'm like, okay, all done. Can't do this anymore. And that's when my life fell apart. And I ended up coming out, and I ended up like acknowledging my trauma and working on it in a different way. But I spent 32 years pushing it away.
How'd you reenact?
Ugh. Ugh. That's painful. I was controlling. I was like my father to my then wife. I cheated on her. I would have sex in the bushes with men because my sexuality was repressed. And I stumbled upon it by accident while I was out for a run one day. And then I lived a secret life for about 8 months. Felt like shit about myself. I'm like, this is not who I am. But it was who I was. Even my therapist at the time did a consultation because him and I thought I had multiple personality disorder. It was like, Frank, you're a Harvard associate professor at Harvard. You have a wife. Why are you having sex in the bushes with men or sex in bathrooms with men? You must, have multiple personality disorder. That was kind of what we thought at the time. And he did a consultation, right, on me. And I was like, please help me. What's going on? And the guy's like, yeah, he doesn't have multiple personality disorder. That's not what this is. But I was so compartmentalized, living double lives. You know what is it? Is it the Ashley Martin or Ashley Madison?
Ashley Madison,
right?
yeah. The
You
cheating
want to
website.
know how popular that website is?
It is.
Wildly popular. And you want to know why? It's because people are compartmentalizing their life and not dealing with it. The large majority are people who are not connected, are kind of living these separate lives and acting them out. It's a billion-dollar industry.
Yeah.
So most of us have a version of it, and instead of talking about if it's okay, there's a lot of not extreme. Maybe mine. So funny when I talk to you, I'm like, oh, is that extreme? You think that's so extreme? Like, I don't see my history as extreme because it was my history. I really don't. And I'm like, oh, so maybe everybody had a smaller version. Okay. Because mine was mine. I don't think
Which
it's
actually might be something people listening are thinking
right.
about their own story, that they
Right.
don't think it's like,
that's like, mine isn't that bad. Why do you have a reaction of horror on your face? That's what I went through. You know what I mean? Like, it's weird. That happens a lot to me when I tell these stories, because now I could talk about it because I've done healing work. So I don't mind talking about it. I don't have a lot of shame like I had. Yes, I cheated on my wife. I don't have shame about it like I used to. I'm not hiding it. It's not a secret because I worked on it. Do you know what I mean? So, but there's a lot of other behaviors that are seemingly subtle that are rooted in the same issues. And I want people to be aware of that too. Like, people work a lot. Do you work a lot? You don't have to be a workaholic, but are you working? Like, how much downtime do you take, right? How much fun do you have? How many vacations do you take? Like, are your kids over managed? They're in this group and that group and this, tutor and that tutor. Those are not balanced, healthy behaviors. Maybe they're not having sex with men in the bushes, but those are also dysfunctional behaviors that are supported by culture and society and reinforced. The more you work, the more you get paid and compensated by your boss. But that is not a balanced life, right? I'm going on vacation this week. I haven't taken a vacation since 2020, March, right before the pandemic. There's a part of me that's so excited about this. And there's a part of me that's like, am I capable of not working? Like, am I really capable of going on a vacation? Like, that's absurd. A lot of people are like that. We have access 24/7 to everything,
Yeah.
right? So I want to call out some of us who have socially acceptable behaviors that are also rooted in unresolved trauma. I don't want it to only be the big, huge ones. Oh, you cheated on your wife. That's obvious.
Yeah.
I just work 70 hours a week. That's normal. It's not.
Now, I mean, the big obvious, especially to the outside,
Yes.
is that overt
I
harm.
know.
Yeah, so you the physical abuse, sexual abuse. So
Yeah.
while all of this is going on, is it usually just one parent
Mhm.
actively causing harm, or is it
Yeah.
both of them?
Yeah, this is where we get into the whole covert thing. Okay. The reality is you cannot have an abusive parent without having a passive parent. Like that combination has to exist, right? You can't have an abusive parent and a normal, healthy, regulated parent. No. Those two, it's like fire and water. They don't go together. Normal, healthy, regulated people don't stay in abusive relationships. They get the hell out of there. Okay. So when you have family dysfunction that you grow up in, it's got to be a combo. It's a 2-for-1. It's not a 1-for-1. They don't stay. Okay. So most people, and this is the work personally that I'm much more attuned to, but you're going to you have the alcoholic father that's yelling, screaming. You're going to have that passive, shut down, disconnected mother who just kind of allows it or perpetuates it. I've had, so you've got to be aware that that combination has to exist in order for dysfunction to perpetuate. And most people are not aware of that. We look at the bruises first before we look at the absence of protection. Because the passive parent is the lack of protection. The passive parent is abandoning safety for kids. Okay. The active parent, it's kind of obvious, yelling and screaming and you son of a bitch. Like, oh, that's obvious, right? Some people are drawn to their active parent, but most of us are drawn to our passive parent because that's our template for love. My father was obvious he hated me. My mother loved me. She loved me. So that's where I learned about love. But I also learned about betrayal because she betrayed me over and over and over by staying, by watching, by allowing it. Okay. So she had to allow it because of her own trauma history. She didn't feel strong enough to get out of a relationship where her husband was abusing her children. And I know she holds a lot of pain around that to this day. We've talked about it, but there is the passive parent that causes often more harm than the active parent. Because what I learned was love and safety don't go together. Because the love that I felt from and for my mother didn't come with safety. It came with exposure to violence over and over and over again. So, you know, I think trust is an absurd word. I think it's ridiculous. I'm like, who trusts people? How could you trust somebody? And the reason I have that view is because I had a father who was yelling and screaming and violating me in a way that was not safe, and I couldn't trust him. But then I also had a mother who was kind and loving and passive and kind of kept sending me to the wolves and never protected me. So for me, I call this parental wound pairing. That's what I call it, because you can't have one without the other. It's a combo. right? And so most of us have some version of that. And I did, like in my adult life, you're like, what do we do when we have these histories? My first relationship, I was my father, and I was with a passive woman, and I was controlling and verbally abusive. And I was like, well, this sucks. And then I did the opposite. Then I became, in my second relationship, I was passive and accommodating, just like my mother. And then I was attracted to an abusive person, right? So I kind of played out both scenarios, right? Until I was like, all right, I did enough work on myself, on my history, to not reenact both sides of that story.
Now, if you do have a healthy parent and they watch their kid get hit in the face,
Yes.
what would the healthy parent say to the abusive one?
They leave. They leave. Okay. There's this movie called The Priest, and it was a great movie. It was a fascinating movie because there was this priest. It was in Ireland, I think, and this guy comes into confessional, and he tells the priest that he's abusing his daughter, and he's like, "And you can't say anything because this is the confidentiality of being in, confessional." And so it was this really intriguing movie and this and that. And the priest, who was gay, had his own secret. So he's like closeted as a priest, and what ended up happening was that the priest navigated a scenario where the mother came in to find the father. So he didn't tell, but he orchestrated it such that the mother found out. The movie was great up until that point because as soon as the mother found out, she took the kids, divorced the husband, and left. And that was the moment I was like, that's not how it happens. Like, it doesn't happen that way. When you have that scenario, you've got the passive person who accommodates it and who allows it. Now, are people in retrospect, and let me just say this very clearly. I'm not saying that everybody in a dysfunctional family stays a victim of both of their parents. I'm not here to keep people as victims. Oh, now you're saying my abusive parent is horrible. I'm a victim of him. No, I'm a victim of my passive parent. My message here is not you're a victim to both of your parents now. Like let's get in a bigger pity party. That's not what I'm saying. And there are many parents who do find out things later who say, oh my God, I'm sorry, I didn't know. Like those scenarios do exist.
Yeah.
They're rare. They're rare. When things are actively happening.
Yeah, how could you not know?
How could you not know? Okay. In retrospect, and my mom has done that. Like, I am so sorry. We put you in conversion therapy. We didn't know better at the time. I am sorry. I did let your father do this and I didn't protect you. So people can come to those realizations, right? And I'm not saying stay a victim of both parents. I'm saying hold the awareness and do your work so that you actually don't perpetuate the problem. That's the message.
What did you think as a child, and what do most people think as a child about that passive parent? Because you see the violence, you see the, like, do you just think it's normal? That's a normal response to the silence?
I hated her and loved her and need her. I hated her at times. I remember I used to say, I hate you, divorce him, I hate you. And my mom would say, the therapist told me you're allowed to hate and I'm supposed to let you hate me. Like it was so hard for her. Like she was doing the script. So on one hand, I hated her. On another hand, I loved her and needed her so much. And she loved me. I felt her love. So it was so confusing to be angry at her in moments. You didn't divorce. How many kids say you should divorce him? You should divorce her. Like that happens a lot, right? Please help me. Please protect me, right? So I both loved her and I both hated her. But the biggest message for me was relationships are not safe. Relationships are not safe. You cannot trust anybody, even someone you love.
So you got what she was doing was off, that she wasn't protecting you.
At the time, no. I'm saying in retrospect, I felt that. I started learning it when I started reliving all the shit that I grew up in. At the time, honestly, this is what would happen. This makes me like, this is hard because after I was in the bedroom and I locked the door, I was so overwhelmed. I was crying and screaming, and then she'd come knock on the door. Frankie, let me in. Frankie, let me in. I'm like, no, not letting you in. You're going to tell him. You're going to tell him. You're going to. No, Frankie, I promise I won't tell you. I promise. I promise. Please let me in. Please let me in. And like every time I open the door, I open that door every single time because I desperately needed her. I just got verbally abused, chased through the house, called horrible names. I broke down every time. I never set a boundary to say, no, you can't come in here. You're harmful to me. I never did it. And this was, I'm talking hundreds and hundreds of times. It happened over and over and over again. And I always caved. I couldn't set a boundary because I needed her. And she would come into the room, tell me how much he loved me, and then pat my head and, soothe my back, and I'd fall asleep. So that was my abuse cycle.
Hmm.
It wasn't just the yelling and screaming. It was the other side also. And most kids have some version of that. The mother ignores them. The mother doesn't look at them. The mother won't talk. So then the kid realizes, okay, you can't talk about this. Mom doesn't want to hear it. You know what I mean? This was my particular scenario with each parent. And each person has that different relationship. But rare is, he's yelling and screaming at me. Yes, honey, you're right. It's wrong. He shouldn't do it. I'm going to end this relationship right now. Some people do that. And those are the people that, I was with a friend in Bali last week, and he's like, my mother in the middle of the night had no money, took the kids, got up and left, and we went to New York. And he was living in Colorado or something like that. He's like, she had no money, was in the middle of the night. And so some parents will be like strong enough to be like, not doing this to my kids. And he felt that, so those scenarios do happen where people are like, I don't care, I'm out. But oftentimes abusive partners are with passive partners for a reason that works for both of them.
Yeah.
So it's harder to break those transgenerational cycles.
Yeah, it feels like a story about, well, the two words that coming through my mind are power and safety. And so like the power thing is like there's like a hierarchy in the home.
Yeah.
Especially if in a scenario where like you're dependent on that abusive person for income as the whoever the other partner.
Yeah.
And then so you watch them and be like, well, okay, I'm going to leave, but like I don't have my own money, and like he's
100%.
controlling the whole thing. And so there could be so many intrusive thoughts.
Yeah.
And then it's like everybody is trying to be safe. Like the mothers are trying to be safe in that scenario. Yeah. And in many ways, a lot of people probably feel like this about their job in some ways. So like they watch this like horrible boss that they have do all this shit. And it's like, well, what am I going to do? Like I can't leave, and so they probably feel stuck at some level, and just like this compounding of trauma,
One of the things that just popped into my head for the first time, interestingly enough, as we're talking about this is what happens. My mom stayed because she grew up with a mother, and her husband died when my mom was 6 months old. So my grandmother raised my mom as a single mother. She had three girls. She was a single mother. Back in the days, back in the 30s and the 40s, that was unheard of. My grandmother had to be alone and raise these three girls. So my mom grew up in this scenario where she grew up with a single mother, and there was nobody there. My mom, and I was born in the 60s, there wasn't a lot of women leaving their husbands, going out and getting a job and doing it on their own. I'm sure there were some of them, but I know for her on some level, like, I'm not going to live the life my mother did, be a single mother, and nobody's supporting me to be able to leave. So I believe she felt stuck, and she didn't feel she had options. That's the passivity we're talking about.
Yeah.
That's the passivity.
What's interesting is, we mentioned overt harm and this like kind of covert harm. And so some of this is, there is physical abuse in the house, and then someone's not saying anything. It's a bystander. But I imagine there's a lot of people listening who didn't grow up in a home like that at all from
Yeah.
the outside. And
Yes.
so for
Yeah.
them, the harm was much harder to see. And
Yes.
it's like even
That's
harder
right.
to name. So there's no violence, there's
Yeah.
no bystander parent, there's no
Yeah.
obvious abuse. And then so then one of the most common things you see is like enmeshment, where like a parent
Yes.
simply can't like tolerate the child being their own person.
Yes.
So what does those sort of dynamics look like in the house that are in this category?
Yeah, so that happens a fair amount too, right? It's maybe not the big, loud yelling and screaming and then the passivity, but if you think about enmeshment is about parents' attachment trauma.
Yeah.
Okay. So if a parent is overly invested in their kid's success, a parent is too close, and we call them helicopter parents now. That's a parent getting their needs met in the service of their kids without the capacity for the parent to allow their kids to be separate and struggle and fail without running in and helping and running in and fixing.
Mhm.
That's a different kind of parent with a certain kind of trauma history. That's more rooted in neglect. I didn't have anybody that was there for me, so I'm going to give the corrective experience to my kid, and I'm going to give them everything I didn't get. But then you're parenting from a wound. You're parenting from a neglect wound. So this over-involvement and this overdoing is often a compensation for what you didn't get. But then you're not parenting from a safe place. You're parenting from a different place in your own trauma history. And so the kids transgenerationally don't know how to fail, don't know how to live on their own, don't know how to stand on their own 2 feet and be independent. So they become overly reliant on their parent for a sense of right and wrong and good and bad. Like when kids are younger, we need that.
Yeah.
But there's this natural progression to allow for that separation and independence. And if a parent doesn't have a safe enough kind of attachment template, they're going to overdo in compensation for what they didn't have. And, sometimes that doesn't feel like yelling and screaming and broken
It
bones.
seems like it could feel like love to a kid, probably early on, maybe in some ways.
It's confusing.
Yeah.
It's confusing. There's this term we called congruence. I know, I can tell you when I'm in a anxious place, like everybody knows, are you anxious? Are you avoidant? Everybody's in their attachment style phase of our life right now. Like you can feel the difference, whether it's anxious connection or a love connection. Kids can feel that. So this meshment, like, oh my God, honey, when a parent is so overly involved, kids feel that, and it doesn't feel congruent to love and about me. But they don't name it, and nobody's saying it. So it's confusing. Is this love? Even though it doesn't feel like love. So it's not congruent to what it feels like. You know what I mean?
No.
So it does that. That creates a scenario where people are like, I don't know what I feel because what I was given doesn't align with what's authentic and true. It's when parents are like, this is, Terry Real talks about this a lot, the entitlement, like, you're so great, you're so good, you're so wonderful. Like when you overdo that, kids get this false sense of entitlement. I'm great, I'm good, but it doesn't actually match any accomplishment. And so this is where a lot of the roots of narcissism are in some ways, when you've been overinflated, but you feel less than and inadequate. That doesn't resonate either.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
What so sometimes it seems like the enmeshment kind of evolves, or it flips into something more specific where the child isn't just absorbed by the parent, but they actually like become responsible for them, the parentification
That's right.
thing. And so what is that, and what does that look like in the home?
Because when kids are in environments, whether they're a passive parent or a yelling parent or an enmeshed parent, the kid on some level knows these people aren't safe and can't take care of me because of their own shit. So somebody's got to take care of things. And so that's where the kids rise up to be the sane one in the house,
Yeah.
but they're the kid. Okay. There was a movie called Family Ties, Michael J. Fox. For those of you who know him and remember him, that was me. I was Michael J. Fox. I was the overly responsible, overly parentified. Like I'm the one that cleaned up after the parties. I cleaned up the dirty ashtrays and the drinks and I took care of the household. I woke up and made breakfast for myself every day. I made my siblings breakfast, right? So when the kid is like, there is nobody here to do the things that are supposed to be done, some kids just leave and are gone. Some kids become overly responsible and become caretakers.
Yeah.
These are gender biases, but typically in teenage years, girls will stay and fight for connection and boys slither away and go into their room and play video games. So, and those are gender biases. Not every boy slithers away, but boys have a tendency to be like, I'm out. I'm not going to be the parentified child. I'm gone, right? Nowhere to be found. And girls tend to kind of stick around to try to make it work. Obviously, different genders do different things, but yeah, parentification, when the parents aren't doing their job, somebody's got to take that role on. And when a 6-year-old takes the role of parent, they're not very effective at it.
Mm. So how does that like play out then, practically?
They become therapists. Sorry. I mean, you become, this is what all these caretaking professions are. This is where you get your value and your worth. Sorry, therapists, not only therapists, but a lot of these helping professions are the parentified children who that's where they see their value and their worth is by taking care of others.
So do they quote unquote mature very quickly or?
Falsely, because they're given a job that they're not suited for. It's like you're given a job that's way beyond your skill level. If you're a 15-year-old who's running a family. And so, yeah, you mature way beyond your means very quickly. But what you're left with is no self-connection, no self-awareness, and no ability to take care of yourself because you're taking care of others in the service of survival. Like if I take care of you, the drunk father, bathe you and clean you and get you off to work, then maybe you'll be regulated enough to take care of me. So it's like an if-then thing. So that parentification is an attempt to get your needs met. But you learn the only way for me to get my needs met is not pay attention to myself and take care of my needs. It's if I take care of you and you're regulated, there's a hope that you're going to take care of me.
Oh, wow.
So that's the cycle of parentification.
Now, what about when you throw triangulation in that, where you have the conflict between the parents and then the child is like a mediator?
People do not know the power of triangles. When you start, like if you start noticing triangles, you're like seeing them everywhere, right? Triangles are everywhere. If you come from a two-parent family, right? You're a kid with a mother and a father, or a kid with two dads, or a kid with two mom, whatever your combination is, those triangles are very common. People, this is like kids that are dating and they're like, oh my God, so I like this boy, but this boy likes this other girl. But like all that shit that goes on is all about triangle.
From parental stuff?
Yeah. Huh?
From origins of...
Yes.
Wow.
Yes, it is. All the drama around that is rare. Our kids getting both of their needs, rarely are kids getting all their needs met from both parents in an equal, balanced way. It's just a reality. It's the reality of life. Some scenarios are worse than others, right? And oftentimes, parents are not aligned in their parenting style. Okay, so you're going to get one thing from this parent, and you're going to get something very different from this parent. And if the parents aren't aligned, they don't hold the space for the kids to be able to have it both. So they get triangulated, right? And that's very common. That's, it's like me and my son, we're just alike. We tend to do this more with our same sex children, same gendered children, right? It's like, I'm just like you. I know what it's like. Mom is blah, 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 blah. So we can kind of push her out of the thing. Or it's the other scenario for, I know exactly what you're like. You're not going to get away with that shit with me. And so then the kid migrates to the other parent who doesn't do that to them. So there's a lot of different scenarios that kind of create these triangles when parents aren't kind of consistently aligned as a united front, right? It allows for things to get split off. And it happens all the time. I love for people to start being aware of triangles. All of a sudden, you kind of see them everywhere in your life. It's with your coworker and your so and so. It's with this friend and that friend. It's with your grandparents. I had this with my grandparents. My grandfather loved me. It's like he would do anything for me, and my grandmother was so mean and nasty because she thought he was, giving me special treatment. And that's a triangle, right? They're kind of everywhere when you start looking.
Now, while this is all going on, whether there's, overt harm, covert harm, whatever, there's this enmeshment, unpredictability in the household. So craziness. I mean, a lot of people aren't navigating this alone. So which leads to kind of the second closest relationship, which is the siblings. And so technically, I guess some people would think that, the people who are supposed to be your allies in the house are like the siblings.
Yeah.
But, it feels like it could go a lot of different ways. Like maybe the sibling was causing a harm directly.
Yeah.
Maybe they were fine, but you weren't, and then that became thing. Or maybe, you trauma bonded or something like that.
Yeah.
And so what does a sibling dynamic look like in a home that's already broken?
Very different adaptations. All of the scenarios that you mentioned are all possibilities. So if you're in some form of a dysfunctional family, you're going to work out some version if you have siblings. And there's a lot of different combinations of that. Like, right, sometimes kids, it's like every man, woman, and child to themselves, and everybody splits and goes off into their own corner. Every man for themselves kind of thing. So that's one dynamic that happens. Nobody's connected to each other. They're like the movie Survivor, the TV show. It's like nobody's forming an alliance here. We are all every man for themselves. So that's one kind of scenario. The other is a trauma bonding scenario. Like, oh my God, my brother and I so trauma bonded. Like I would have not survived without him. He was there for me. He woke up and helped me through every nightmare. So some siblings become trauma bonded for sure in a way that is like bonds beyond healthy. In a way, I will do anything because we are here to save each other's lives. I'll save your life, you save my life. Other siblings.
Well, is that healthy, the trauma bonding?
No, it's not healthy.
It's not healthy?
No, I mean, it's another form of survival. Because no, I love my brother more than anything in the world. He was there for me, but we were bonded by trauma and by love. Do you know what I mean? No, you don't. It's not like, oh, this is good because wasn't healthy. It's not healthy for him or for me in some ways. I mean, we've grown into a healthy relationship, but
because a lot of people be like, oh, that's so beautiful that you like were there for each other in that way.
But okay, as kids, the trauma bonding in moments allowed for closeness for survival. And in other moments, we acted out our trauma on each other. Okay. I have this here. I don't know where you can see it. I have a piece of lead in my arm right here. It's been there my whole life because my brother stabbed me one day with a pencil. He was like, we were fighting and he just stabbed me and the damn piece of lead stuck in my arm and it's kind of been there ever since. So it's not like trauma bonding is only all good. Kids are acting out the aggression. That's another very common scenario in siblings, right? Is that if I've been humiliated by my father, which is a way for me to feel better? Is to humiliate my younger brother. Okay, so that also happens a lot. It's like shit rolls downhill. If I'm going to be treated like shit, a way for me to feel better is to treat you like shit. So that's a very common scenario.
Which compounds the trauma. It's like a double whammy.
It totally compounds the trauma. So kids will act out the trauma a lot. Another scenario, and this is one that's in our family, is we have a special needs child, and we were so overwhelmed by the needs of our youngest kid. Our oldest son felt totally neglected. And so he felt like he didn't get his needs met because we were so overwhelmed by the needs of our special needs kid. And so the sibling dynamic was playing out that imbalance. They fought for many, many years and didn't get along because my older son was really angry and really jealous at my younger son. So that's another scenario where kids are playing out what they're not getting from their parents on each other. So there's a lot of dynamics. And, sexual abuse among siblings is really complicated. I've worked with a lot of couples or a lot of kids who've been sexually abused by their siblings, and the power differential's really confusing.
How so?
Because we're equals, we're siblings, right? There's this equality, and so it's very confusing. Like, I'm not saying it's clearer, but when a parent sexually violates a kid, there's a clear power differential. The kid who's been abused has no resource and no power. With siblings, it gets very confusing. Like, was it my fault? Did I like it? Did I participate? Did I really want this? We're equals. Why didn't I stop it? Because the power differential isn't so clear cut. It's much more confusing for the abused sibling in sexual experiences to be like, yeah, like, what was my role? What did I want? What didn't I want? Am I a part of this? Did I agree? It's very confusing, and it's really complicated. I've also, for the kids who are acting out abuse, I've worked with siblings who abuse siblings. They feel horrible because they're acting out unresolved trauma within themselves on somebody, and it's not really who they are, but they're acting out something that they have no words for, that they've never been able to heal. Guilt and shame, and it's complicated. It's really complicated in the sibling dynamic. It's not surprising to me anymore, but sibling abuse is really complicated dynamics because of some of what I talked about, and it's hard to treat that. It's kind of like girls get, 1 in 4 girls get violated, 1 in 8 boys or whatever it is. There's this cultural phenomenon. We haven't talked a lot about the influence of culture and impact on all of this stuff too, which is huge. But you're like, hey, dude, I had sex with my babysitter. You lucky stud. Like, guys are lucky to be sexually violated when they're 12.
Yeah, it's totally a thing. Yeah.
Right? And girls are not. Girls are like, this is my role, and I'm supposed to give in to what the man in power wants. So it's confusing for men to be sexually violated, especially if it's by a woman and if they're heterosexual, to be like, I'm so lucky. My friends are thinking this is so cool. I feel like crap. It was gross and dirty and disgusting. I didn't like that. So it's confusing.
So, you obviously, had the situation with your mother and your father, and you go to therapy, and then, you start, going through all of this stuff. Are the feelings the same when it comes to your sibling, or is there different types of things that would hit somebody later in their life about their sibling, and different sorts of visceral feelings that would come up?
Siblings are doing what they can to survive in a dysfunctional family, all different versions of it, depending on how many siblings there are. And then when you grow up and you become adults, and then you start seeing the way each of your siblings is playing out or not the family dysfunction, then there's this awareness of like, oh my God, my brother is just like my father. And you see that. And it has an effect. Or my sister is acting just like my mother, so passive. I can't believe what she's doing with her kids. Do you know what I mean? So when you grow up and maybe you're the sibling that does the work and you're with siblings who don't do the work, you're seeing them act out the dysfunction, Or you're acting out one side of this function and another sibling is acting out a different side of this function. So you kind of see who prioritizes what and who acts out what. Like my brother, um, I used to go visit him when he got married and had kids younger than I did, because of marrying a woman and all this kind of crap. And so I would go visit him with his kids, and we had this really violent, out of control, crazy household. And he said to me, "I am not going to do what Dad did. I will not do it." And I'm like, "Good
Do
job."
what?
Reenact the violence.
Okay.
Okay. So he was very clear about it. And him and his wife had no rules at all. No rules at all. So he went 180-degree opposite.
Hmm.
And I will never forget this one time I came to my brother's house, and the kids were running around with sticks on fire, marshmallows from the fireplace. And they're like, woo, 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 woo. They're playing Indian, running through the house with fire sticks. And I looked, I was like, oh my God, this is wild and crazy, out of control, in the total opposite. My brother was intending to not do what my parents did, but he recreated craziness with no boundaries and structure at all instead of too much. So you see all the different ways siblings react, and then what they end up kind of doing in their families. That's the whole transgenerational piece, right? It's a huge piece because different people react differently and different people act out and perpetuate different stuff.
Now, what's interesting is the people that come into your office, now they're adults. Like, do people make the connection that they're struggling in their romantic life or with their friendships back to this stuff of like, oh, I'm doing this because my mother did this to me, or they don't?
No, they don't.
That's fascinating.
That's
to
the
me.
job of the therapist. They're like, my boss sucks. My wife is a bitch. Like, that's what they come in with. They come in with a problem that's usually about somebody else. My wife wants me to be here. I don't want to be here. I'm going to lose my job unless I blah, 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 stop my drinking. So people come in with some behavior that's causing a problem. It's the therapist's job to say, let's appreciate this behavior. Let's appreciate it for what it's trying to do. And let's look at the origins of what's causing it. Most people, because we suppress our pain, we're not conscious of it. We suppress it to stay away from it. The behaviors are a result of suppressing the pain. So it is the job of the coach or the practitioner or the therapist to say, like, let's look at the root cause of this behavior and let's do something about it instead of just changing your behavior. Right? There's some therapies that are about changing the behavior. There's other therapies that are about getting to the root cause. But people don't come in and say, I've lost my fifth job. Let's talk for the next 20 years about my mother and how she didn't love me. Like, people really don't do that.
What's the actual mechanism there? Like, how does what happens in the house then follow someone into their adult relationships?
Because you perpetuate some version. Like, this is the whole thing. And people don't like when I say this so much. Everybody's aware that who was it? I think maybe it's Terry Real or Lori Gottlieb say, you marry your unfinished business. Right. And I love that quote because it's kind of what it is. We are seeking redemption for our unhealed wounds. So we attract people who are going to help us heal our wounds. You're going to be the father I never had. You're going to be the mother I never had. So attraction actually is redemption of wounding, but it's unconscious. You're like, oh, he's cute. Oh, she's really beautiful. I love her eyes. He's really smart. So on the surface, you think attraction is the physicality or the intellect and stuff. But in fact, you migrate towards somebody who has similar wounding as you do. You are drawn to people with similar wounding with opposite adaptive styles. I say we have opposite survival strategies, similar wounds. Okay, so I'm an extrovert. I've attracted an introvert. Okay, my husband has the same exact father and mother as I do. So we both have similar wounds, but we had different ways of dealing with it. So people attract what they're not. Opposites attract. and like attracts like. So we attract similar wounds. And most people aren't aware of this. And, healthy relationships, if there is such a thing as working through your shit, instead of like, you heal mine, I'll heal yours. Here's what it should be. We've got similar shit. You work on yours, I'll support you. I'll work on mine, you support me. That's what it kind of should be, instead of you heal mine and I heal yours. Because what ends up happening is, if we're in the you heal mine, I'll heal yours, I migrate towards you because you're everything I think I need to heal my wound. But then you start acting like you are and you don't fix my problem. So I start resenting you. And then you hear these couples all the time. It's like, oh my God, he's just like my mother. Oh my God, he's just like my father. And then you start losing interest in sex with your partners. You're like, I don't want to have sex with my mother or my father. So like, we draw these people in to heal, be the father and mother we never had, the father and mother we needed and wanted.
Yeah.
They fail at it because they're a partner. They're not our mother and father. And then we resent them, and then we don't want to be intimate with them. So the trick is, yes, that's what draws us together. But from the get-go, could you just have the agreement? We got similar shit. You do your work, I'll do my work, and we'll support each other. That's what makes for healthier relationships.
Yeah, I think that's a revelation in itself. I think that the relational relational trauma from your childhood. I mean, you're already like starting from like a compromised position in terms of who you're selecting as a romantic partner.
Totally, we all are.
Yeah. And so we talked about the overt and covert harm in the home, but now that someone's in an adult romantic relationship, can they actually recognize it for what it is this time around? Like when your dad was hitting you, you were like, oh, is this kind of my fault? Or, I guess this is kind of wrong. But like, if that's happening in your boyfriend or whatever, your girlfriend's doing something, do you recognize it?
I hope so. I'll tell you the moment I recognized it. So not everybody has the capacity for self-awareness. Some people do, some people don't, right? And in my first relationship with a woman, I said I was controlling, and I was controlling like my father, and she was passive like my mother. And there was the moment for me where I caught her in a lie. I don't trust anybody. She was like, I promise I'll always be honest with you. So I was like, oh my God, I could have trust in a relationship. And of course she lied because she's a human. I was irate, yelling and screaming at her. She was sitting on the toilet, and I just fucking let her have it verbally. And I stopped. I stopped myself in that moment. And I was like, look at you. Like, I was so triggered. I was so angry because she betrayed me. Like, my childhood trauma came up. And she put her hands in her face and she just started crying. And I stopped. Thank God. I was like, but I looked at myself and I was like, I have become my father. I was so self-loathing in that moment. Yes, I apologized. Yes, we repaired it. But that was a moment for me that I was like, oh my God, I have become the very thing that I was the recipient of. Not everybody gets to that moment. It's what happens with substance abuse a lot. Like, are you going to get to your bottom? Right? So not everybody gets to those moments of awareness. Some people do, some people don't. That's what happened for me with my kids. That's when I was suicidal. First time in my life was when I started yelling at them the way I was yelled at by my father. And I was like, I'd rather kill myself than perpetuate this trauma. So not everybody has those aha moments of awareness, because you're so in your trigger, you're so in yourself, you're justified. She lied to me, blah, whatever the hell we do, we talk ourselves into it. That's why most couples come into couples counseling. She's this, he's that. If you change her, everything will be fine. It's not the way it works.
I'd imagine there's a version of this where like you have all this childhood trauma and like a completely complicated relationship with your parents. But then like you become adult and then you're dating this guy and then you begin to tolerate things that are just like obviously harmful. And now you're an adult. Like so it's like someone cheating on you, controlling who you see, monitoring your phone, isolating you from people that you love. Why would someone tolerate that as an adult?
Because they complain about the other person. You go out with your girlfriends, you talk about what an asshole he is. He's such a jerk. He's such a this. And then your girlfriends are like, oh my God, he's such a jerk. I can't believe you, blah, 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 blah. So if you're going to stay in blame and you're not going to be like, what have I done to attract a person like this? Why am I tolerating this behavior? We don't do that so quickly. It's too, when you see the egregious behavior in the other person who you've attracted, your first instinct is not look at why I attracted this person. I have a good friend, Wayne, and he's gay. He was married to a woman too. We have a lot in common. And one day I was with him for dinner and we were both complaining about our quiet partners. My husband is so quiet, he's passive. And Wayne is like, oh my God, he's this and that. So we were like having a bitch fest about our partners, right? And at one point, I'm the one that said it. I'm like, Wayne, we chose these people. Like, what's with us? And he just kind of burst out laughing. He's a therapist too. And is like, people don't look at why they chose this as much as they focus on the other person's behavior.
So then if you were to go inside, why would you tolerate that?
Why did I choose that, right? Why did I choose that? I mean, I know if I talk about my scenario with, my scenario with my wife, why did I choose that? Is because I had no idea, no connection to what it was like for me to be a man. And so I was trying to work out my abusive relationship with my father and my passive relationship with my mother. So I chose a woman who was passive like my mother, and I was going to have a better outcome with this scenario. And then when your wounds get triggered, you end up becoming the things that you're trying to fix. What better way? And it wasn't conscious. It's not conscious. That's what I'm telling you. Healing our wounding is unconscious. I didn't choose this woman. It's like, this is going to be a great idea. I'll be just like my father. She'll be like my mother, and I'll fix my childhood trauma. Nobody does that. You're drawn to these people.
It's all unconscious.
It's all unconscious. It's when we bring it conscious is when you look at your own behavior. Like when I do couples work, I'm not like, yeah, let's fix him being so shut down. I'm like, let's work on why you chose shutdown and what do you need to heal to either be okay with shutdown and accept shutdown or choose somebody different because shutdown's not okay for you. Do you see what I'm saying? So it's that when are the moments for people where they start looking at their own behavior and take responsibility? One of the things, there's this whole narcissist can't be treated thing in the world. And there's a lot to be said for some people aren't interested in working on themselves. So when I work with somebody now, I'm like, tell me what your problem is and tell me what you want to work on within yourself. Because if they have no answer there, I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about how the teacher and the son and the husband is a jerk. I'm not interested in that. If you don't have any awareness or interest in working on yourself, then we're going to spend a lot of time blaming and nothing's going to change.
No. So when someone stays in a dynamic, whether consciously or unconsciously, over the long term, to outsiders, it looks very obvious to them of like, well, just leave the relationship.
Right.
And so, they think, why would you stay in an abusive relationship? And so what would your response be to that?
It is so obvious to an outsider when somebody else is triggered. Okay, you could sit at the dinner table and say one parent's losing it. They're yelling and screaming because the kid spilled milk. The kids look at each other. They're like, well, that's a crazy reaction. The kids look at the parent the other parent, and the parent's like, yeah, that's a fucking crazy reaction. Like, everybody knows it's obvious except the person who's justified because the milk is spilled for the fifth time. So when you're reenacting your trauma, you have no frontal lobes. You have no capacity to process information or have objectivity. So if you're triggered in a relationship, whether it's passive or active abuse, you don't have the perspective that an outsider has. You're reliving a version of your history in an attempt to try to fix it. So the people who are in the abusive relationships don't have the capacity in those moments to see the bigger picture, to see their role, to see what they're reenacting. But from the outsider's perspective, it's obvious. It was very hard for me. I worked with a lot of women who were in domestic abusive relationships, and they were steeped in their passivity. And I was like, I mean, they come in with a black eye and they tell me why they need to stay. He loves me. You don't understand. He was just having a bad day. His boss is so mean to him. Some justification, because this guy who gives him a black eye is not as bad as the father was, because this guy loves me sometimes too. So there's like intermittent reinforcement with some of your trauma also. So it's very compelling to stay in those dynamics, especially when you're still unconsciously trying to heal your childhood trauma. But he does love me. He's not always like this, right? And passivity is the way to protect yourself. I remember working with this one woman, and I'm like, did you tell your boss you're not working 60 hours a week overtime? Did you tell your husband you're not going to have sex with him every single time he's drunk? And she's like, no. Like, no. I'm like, why? You get, in the beginning, I get kind of exacerbated. And she said to me, smaller is so much safer than big. So her solution in these moments is, the smaller I stay, the less likely I'm going to draw attention to myself. So that was her survival strategy. You get that? If I can be small, if I cannot make waves, if I cause trouble, it's going to bring more abuse onto me. So if I stay quiet, okay, honey, I'm sorry. Okay, I won't do it. Then maybe he'll be regulated and I'll be safe. So the passivity, the staying in abusive, is an attempt at trying to be safe, right? But you're also trying to fix your trauma. You don't fix it when you relive it. When I met my husband, I told you I was like in an abusive relationship, as passive and abusive. And I'm like, I'm running out of fucking options here. Like, what's my choice here? And when I met my husband, I was like, I don't recognize this. I didn't know this consciously, but I was like, this isn't a familiar dynamic. Like, it was like a foreign experience. I'm like, and it was at the moment that I wasn't reenacting my mother wound, and I wasn't reenacting my father wound. I had healed enough, not 100%. I had healed enough to stop attracting what I needed to fix. And that's the place where people choose from a different place, is when you're attracting not from wound fixing.
Last year, Dr. Ramani was on the podcast, and yeah, she said the positive, the intermittent reinforcement thing. And then she also, she started talking about the slot machines in Vegas.
Yes.
Which I thought was a really interesting analogy of, like, you go there and you get this little mini dopamine hit and it gives you the illusion that you're going to like win it all. Yeah. But to an outsider, it's like, you're not going to win it all. It was just like one little tiny hit.
Don't say one little tiny hit when you've had a lot of abuse and you get those moments. They are so powerful. Dopamine's really, really potent. Like, an abusive guy who's like, baby, I am so sorry. I can't, I love you so much. Nobody would stay with me. I can't believe you do this. Nobody has loved me more than you have. Thank you so much. I promise I'll never do this again. I'm going to give you everything in the world. That's enticing. That's really enticing. So you're like, oh, I'm going to get what I wanted. Thank God. Thank goodness. And then it happens next week or 3 weeks. So though intermittent reinforcement is so much more potent because it's sporadic, you don't know when you're going to get it, and the dopamine hit is strong. That's what drugs do. That's what cocaine is, like such a powerful hit. But then you get, 50 horrible experiences and you're searching for that next good hit. Those relationships that are domestic abuse are not only bad. What the woman will do is go tell her girlfriend about the way he beat her up. She's not going to tell her girlfriend about all the amazing, wonderful things he said the night before. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Because you're like, help me with this, but this is what keeps me
So
drawn.
so if you were to just define, I mean, we're talking about intermittent reinforcement, but how would you define it clearly?
It is the experience. And by the way, I need to say this because it's really important. I am not blaming anybody who's staying in an abusive relationship. I'm not blaming people who are in abusive relationships. It is a really powerful, painful thing, and it's very hard to get out of them. So that outsider view doesn't understand the complexity of all the dynamics. So I don't want anybody to at all feel like I'm trashing them for staying, because that's not the case. People are reenacting their trauma in an attempt to fix their trauma. You have to hold that awareness without blaming or shaming, because the people that are in them, Matthew, both the passive and the active, have tons of self-loathing. I hate that I'm abusive and violent. I hate myself. I hate that I'm staying and allowing myself to be abused. So when there's outside judgment, it just compounds the internal shame that is so powerful. So I really want to name that. It's very important that we're not judging from the out. So obvious. Why doesn't she get out of this? It's so much more complicated than that. And it's very difficult to get out of those relationships. However, and in part of it is that intermittent reinforcement. You get something that you didn't get from your father or your mother. And that is that hope that you're going to get that in a general way. And when you were treated badly, you don't feel you deserve good.
Yeah.
Good doesn't feel good. Good feels foreign. Abuse feels familiar, with the hope that it's going to be different. That's the intermittent reinforcement. Do you hear the difference?
Yeah.
That's the way it works. It's much more complicated than people are aware of on the surface.
Yeah. So I feel like a lot of people listening, like this conversation is maybe the first time some of these dots have ever connected for them. Between what happened to them and how they're currently living. You've spent time around thousands of people in these scenarios. So what does it actually look like when someone starts to see that connection for the first time?
It is that moment. It's that, like, when you hit your moment of like, oh my God, I'm just like my mother and I'm just like my father. If you can take those moments with, this is an opportunity for me to do something about it, as opposed to, I'm a horrible person, I'm going to feel more shame and bad about myself, because it's what you do with your moment that's really important for me. Like, and I say, you could repeat it, you could repress it, or you could rise above it. So anytime in this course that I talk about, the path to healing trauma, I talk about the power of the pause. Okay. So if there's a moment that you're like, oh my God, I am just like my mother. Do you know how many times parents say this? Oh my God, I can't believe I sound just like my mother. It happens to all of us, right? If you can take those moments of awareness and pause, stop, and go inside, go into your body, go internally for a moment and begin the differentiation. I talk a lot about differentiation. What's happening now? What happened then? And you're not going to be able to figure it out. You're not going to be able to talk yourself through it. So when you get into one of those moments of awareness, stop and go inside. Like, what's happening now? What is about then? And you start differentiating and learning the origin. What's theirs? What's mine? What's past? What's present? I'm always wanting
What do you
people.
mean what's theirs and what's mine?
Like when your kid is dysregulated, tired, hasn't eaten, and hits his sibling, it's like, all right, the kid's dysregulated, he's hit his sibling. That's his.
Yeah.
Your Jesus Christ, stop doing this. You're a horrible person. That's yours. So it's like, what is the other person's? What's their responsibility? The kid's tired, it's dysregulated, blah, blah, blah. Okay, fine. What's your responsibility? Right? So you got to be able to differentiate,
Separate in the moment.
in the moment. That's why the pause is so important. It's like, stop. Nobody ever does better when they yell at each other so that the other person finally gets it. Fights don't say, oh, thank you so much. You're right. I finally understand what you're talking about. That never happens. It's stopping, breaking the cycle, separating, going inside. Like, what is mine? What is theirs? What did I do? Did they do? What you got to be able to stop and get away from it and go inside and differentiate. What's mine? What's theirs? Yeah, he is spacey. He doesn't follow through. He does have ADHD. He's not great at paying the bills, for example. Okay. That's his. Okay. That's his. What's mine? I'm so impatient. I really am pushing. I'm so stressed and overwhelmed. I'm so behind. I'm really unrealistically asking some stuff of him that he really shouldn't have to do in that time frame. Like the capacity to realistically see both sides.
This is a lot of cognitive, though. This is a lot of cognitive and thinking.
It's when you're stopping and listening, you can get this awareness. Okay. You have to feel it in order for the awareness to come in.
So it's like my husband's doing this thing.
Yeah.
And you need to stop and like, so you have this whole reaction.
Yeah.
And then you need to separate, oh, part of this is because of what my father did. And then, maybe there's 10% that is because my husband's lazy and
I'll give you, all right. Yeah. So I'll walk you through. And yeah, I guess I'm talking about my scenario. It's pretty obvious there. My husband better not be listening to this. Right. But it's like, so here's what I'll say. You stop and you go inside. And first you're going to feel feelings. You're going to feel anger. You're going to feel rage. You're going to feel sadness. You're going to feel whatever. And you let the feelings move through until you rise to the surface with your prefrontal cortex back online and you could start assessing the situation more accurately. Okay? Because in the moment, when you stop, you're going to be with that fucking idiot or blah, 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 blah. You're going to be with those feelings. So you have to be with the feelings first. The average feeling, I think, lasts 90 seconds, not a lifetime.
Is that true for a trauma person?
I'm pretty sure. I don't know. It's like
no,
average.
For a trauma person. Yeah. Is that true for a trauma person?
Feelings are different than triggers.
Okay.
The average feeling is 90 seconds. Triggers can last a long time. People think triggers are trauma, are feelings. They're not. They're reactions from your past. There's a difference there. So you've got to kind of move through the feeling, get your prefrontal cortex back online so that you can start differentiating what's mine and what's his. I jumped the gun earlier. It's like stop and differentiate, but it's really stop, feel what's in your body, validate it, let it move through. Then you have the capacity to be like, yeah, he's a nice guy. He tries his best, blah, 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 blah. Okay. I say don't re-engage until you feel compassion for the person that you're pissed off at, because you've recovered and you've been able to differentiate, and then you could re-engage. Okay. So once you've like, this is him, this is me, then the second level of differentiation is how much of what I'm feeling is about him and us, and how much of this is about my history. When has this happened? When was the first time? When have I felt this before? The second level of differentiation is what percentage is about today and what percentage is about my history.
Now, that could be very activating, probably, if you start thinking about your trauma or like remembering my father did this or that. Like, would that even like dysregulate you even more when you're differentiating?
That's why I say you've got to recover from the current event to have the differentiation, and then do that. Once you've recovered, you have the capacity to be with your history differently. You've got to recover from the trigger. Nothing useful happens in reenactments. Nothing useful happens in triggering. This is why the power of the pause is so important. Get out, move through it, recover, and then start differentiating. Because once you've recovered, then you don't get flooded in the same way. But if you're doing it in the moment, it's going to be a shit show. And for me, this is what I do is I go out hiking in the canyons. Some people go for a walk. Some people go into their man cave and listen to music. Some people play a video game. Like, it doesn't matter what you do, but just stop, get out, recover. Then you can start differentiating, because then you come back to a discussion. It's like, honey, I am really sorry. I know you're trying your best. I know I can be difficult sometimes. I'm sorry that I was so pressured. I really appreciate all that you do. And man, we just came back from a visit with my family, and the stuff with my mom was really powerful for me right now. I'm sorry. So then the person's like, oh my God, come here. Because I take responsibility, I have a clear head, and I'm aware of what's now and I'm aware of what's then. Like, that doesn't take too long. Many people don't know that's the process in the moment. That's part of what I want to teach people. Like, it doesn't have to be a perpetual cycle of reliving your history. There is a way to get out of this, and there's a way to heal it.
Well, that's the differentiation in the moment, but this beast that's underneath is still there. So like you probably will still keep getting in that situation unless you go do the work.
You got it. That's
correct. And you've often talked about there's a difference between revisiting your trauma and reliving it.
You got it.
What does that mean, and why does that distinction matter so much?
Every time you're triggered, whatever, or shut down, or you're triggered. Okay, triggering means your wound, some childhood something has been activated. Any big reaction or disconnected reaction is rooted in the wound being triggered. Okay. And if you just keep reliving the reaction, whether it's the reactivity of dissociation and disconnection or the reactivity of yelling and screaming, you're reinforcing the trauma. Once you pause, move through, and differentiate, as we were talking about, then there is the process of being with it, not in it. When you're in it, all you're doing is reinforcing the trauma. And we know this. This is neuroplasticity, reinforcing the trauma. Every effective trauma treatment has a be with it component. So you have to get the person to the capacity to be with the feelings, the thoughts, the distorted, the physical sensation, not just tell the story, because that won't work. Telling the story doesn't work. So you have to be able to
what do you mean?
With.
A lot of people be like, what do you mean?
Tell the story. And this happened. And when I was 7, my father beat me up. And when I was 6, blah, blah, good. Like, blah, 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 blah. You just talk about it over and over again. Talking about trauma does not heal trauma. Talking about trauma is the first step of awareness. And then you actually have to do the internal work to feel the feelings, the distorted the stuff in your body, the tightness in your chest, your heart pounding, the physical sensation, and the distorted beliefs. I'm no good, I'm unlovable, I'm rotten. So you've got to be with the feelings, the physical sensations, and the distorted thoughts, not relive them. I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot, I'm an idiot. It's like, wow, there's a part of me that holds that belief that I'm so bad and wrong.
That's so interesting because because you could talk about it, but you could talk about it from like a disconnected way.
Totally.
Of like you're just like telling a narrative in a movie.
Yes.
But then you actually have to feel like what happened to you. You have to like revisit and feel that reality again.
Yes, that's correct.
And so if you don't feel it, then you're not
going to be able to heal it.
Oh,
that's correct. Most people don't know this. Wow. This is why Instagram is loaded with 10 quick ways to not do it. Okay. This is the thing that people are so working so hard to not do, is feel it. There's a million different this and that and 5 steps here and a coaching here and a book here, all the ways to quickly get over it without feeling it. Feeling it's hard. Feeling it is different than reliving it. And that's what most people don't understand. I'm not saying go back and relive your experience. That will not be helpful. I'm saying you've got to visit the emotion in a way that you're not overwhelmed by it. But the part that holds the trauma needs to know that somebody else feels it. Somebody else gets it. Okay, that's a big piece. Same thing with the physical sensations, like people, fibromyalgia, all the stuff, irritable bowel, all these things. It's like, I was with a friend of mine who has all this sciatica pain, and I'm like, what is it trying to tell you? He's like, what do you mean? I'm going to the chiropractor. I'm like, what is the sciatica communicating? What is it trying to say? You got to listen to the symptoms and really be with what the communication is. And he was like, it's like, you have to stop. You have to stop.
That might not click for people immediately, though.
No, it's a practice of learning how to listen. But if you're out all the time,
and
you're
distracted.
Not practice. Yeah. You're not, that's why I say the power of the pause, stop and start listening. It doesn't happen immediately, but it's like, I had asthma for the longest time. I don't really have asthma anymore. And it was always me not speaking up. Like, I was like, what are you saying? I was being choked. Like I always had this cough, and I don't have it anymore. It's because I've been speaking my truth so much more, even though it's hard, I'm doing that. And so my voice doesn't need to kind of communicate. My body doesn't need to communicate that way anymore. This is the Gabor. Most physical symptoms have a thing. So you've got to be able to be with it. Physical sensations, distorted belief. You're a loser. Everybody has a critic. You're a loser. You're no good. You're this, you're that. What is the critic trying to help? Listen to those voices. So you got to be with it in order to move through it. And most people do not understand this. The other thing I want to say about the healing is we not only need to be with it, we have a corrective experience so that we get something different from what we had.
That's important.
It's what everybody's trying to do when they marry so-and-so, is they want the corrective experience, but they're not connecting to their feelings and working through things. They're like, you fix me. I don't want to do it myself. Do you know what I mean? This is the attempt of a corrective experience when we're, finding a partner. But you have to, the part of you that doesn't feel loved needs to feel loved. The part of you that feels I'm no good and I'm worthless needs to feel good and worthless. So it's got to be felt first, not relived. Then it's got to be corrected. It's like, oh, this part gets what it needed. Then release is possible.
That's really interesting because and there's a distinction that needs to be made because at some level, you trying to get something from another person is sort of like a healthy thing, but it's done in a dysfunctional way because basically what you're saying is that for the trauma to heal, you need the opposite. You need the
Yeah.
corrective experience of what that
Yeah.
person, that the friend,
You
the
got it.
sibling
That's right.
traumatized you, the
Yeah.
romantic partner. You need the opposite. So if you had an abusive husband, you need a safe
Right. But you can't,
person who.
yeah,
Okay.
go ahead. You're right. But you can't attract a safe husband until you do some of this healing work. I said reenacted both of the things in an attempt to heal it, but I was my mother and I was my father. It wasn't until I met my husband I was like, oh, I had the capacity to attract something different because I had done enough healing.
But it seems like a lot of people in their trauma will run away from the thing that would give them a corrective
They
experience.
think they're running away from it. They're
Like,
not.
oh, he's so healthy and he's
Yeah.
like treating me so well, and then
Yeah.
I just run away.
Because if you're with, and I've seen people, I've worked with people before who, if you have pain and trauma inside, your system will not allow good because you're holding bad. And you have to heal that bad before you can take in good.
Mm.
Okay. So yeah, why don't you can't energetically be with a healthy person. It's like I talked about the parent. You don't have a healthy parent and an unhealthy parent. It doesn't resonate. Okay. So it's the same internally. If you feel, I was so insecure in my life, so insecure because of my history. Oh my God, I was so insecure. And so it wasn't until I healed enough of that I felt worth a good relationship, valuable enough to feel worth a good relationship. So that work has to be done. You can't just bypass it. The other thing I want to say that is so important for me now is these moments of being with the pain, having the corrective experience and releasing it. Sometimes they happen in a moment, but they're rarely a Hollywood moment. People want the Hollywood moment. That's not really how healing works. It's 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. You accumulate corrective experiences, and then you start wanting and believing and experiencing this new way of being. That's another big fallacy, is like, oh, just wave your hands and do EMDR and then you'll be cured, or do 10 sessions of IFS and, you're unburdened and you're good to go. It's not the way it works. And I used to say this, honestly, I used to say permanent healing of emotional wounding. I'm like, nah, it doesn't exist. It's this cumulative experience of having this that, builds on itself so that you start feeling worth it, and that you don't slip back, and that it's easier to speak up. And you can, when you're dating somebody, you're like, the red flag comes up a lot quicker. Like, I've worked with so many people that they're like, oh my God. A good friend of mine right now, she's like, I saw it on the first date, Frank. And I'm like, what? She's like, I would have been with him for 6 months in the past, but now I saw who he was on the first date. And I'm like, thanks for the date. I'm not having another one. So it's like that. The more you do these moments, the more awareness you have, the less you reenact it. I want people to know it just doesn't happen in a moment. You have a lot of moments that allow you to show up in the world differently.
I know. What's interesting to me is, Angela Duckworth wrote this book about grit.
Yes.
She has a new one coming out called Situated, and it's all about like your environment. You're talking about this corrective experience, and could someone set a safe environment for you? So like you're a traumatized person from whoever in your past, and then you end up dating someone who happens to be healthy, or creates a safe environment for you. Could the corrective experience precede all of the other work in a way? Like, cause you get what I'm saying?
Yeah, it's a both and. It's a both and. Like, I will tell you, I did it, and it's not an either or.
Yeah.
And I'll use myself as an example. Like, I did enough healing to be able to find a pretty healthy person to be with.
Yeah.
And my husband. Was my work done? No. Was he the most healing relationship I've ever been in? Absolutely, yes. That environment that I was able to allow myself to be in a healthier environment then enable me to do deeper and more layers of work? Absolutely. So it's not so cut and dry. That's why I say these healing moments accumulate over time. It's like, when does the scales tip for you where you're like, oh, first date, not doing it. Oh, that's how healing really works. And I want people to know that, because so many people feel bad about themselves because they don't have the big, I'm done, it's not really how it works. So the scales do tip and you continue your healing journey. And at some point you're allowing yourself to be with somebody who isn't abusive. These things, the more you take responsibility and take accountability and do that inside work,
Yeah.
the less likely you're to recreate and perpetuate the trauma.
Now, the interesting thing, this connects with is, you've often talked about, there's many different forms of trauma. There's,
Yes.
religious trauma, you
Yes.
could be in poverty, there's so many different forms.
That's right.
There's acute trauma. Elizabeth Smart, which you were talking about, that's a
Yeah.
stranger. Now, relational trauma
Yeah.
is complex because the actual relationships that cause this in the first place, and dealing with those,
Right.
and that the reality is, like, those relationships still may be in your life. Like
Yes.
a
Yep.
parent, a sibling,
Yep.
an ex-partner who you have to like manage kids with, who was like extremely abusive to you. How does someone do this work while the source of harm is still present in their life? Like, what does that actually look like?
Estrangement. That's popular right now. I am not saying that's the solution to this problem. I'm saying this is what culture and society is really doing right now. Like, let's just be estranged, right? No, I do not think estrangement is the answer to this problem at all. Okay, let me be clear. But if you have a co-parenting situation because you get divorced and you have to raise kids together and you have to interact with this guy who you don't want to be in a relationship with anymore, you have to learn how to navigate that relationship, right? The way we do that, or everybody's going back for the holidays and they're like, oh my God, I got to go back to this family. You know what I mean? It's like we have to learn how to create safety and boundaries for ourselves in order to be able to be in relationships that may not be so healthy. So that I use the word safety and I use the word boundaries very specifically. For me, I was not strong enough at some point in my life to be able to set up a boundary with my parents. So I couldn't be in a relationship with them. I was not strong enough to be in a relationship. So I set a boundary and I didn't see them. I didn't expect it to be this long, but it ended up being 7 years. Okay. And I'm
full no contact?
I think after several years, I started having phone contact. It was full no contact 7 years. But I think at some point I started talking to them on the phone, like once every 3 or 4 months. But the reason I bring that up is that it was because I wasn't strong enough to set up boundary and be able to be in a relationship with them, because I couldn't expect their behavior to change and they weren't interested in changing. So you can still be in a relationship with somebody who may not be healthy if you have the capacity to create safety and boundaries for yourself. So that's the work. It's never about changing the other person. It's about and there was a point that I was like, I'm not going to stay in my childhood bedroom. I'm going to get a hotel room. I'm going to tell my parents I'll be here for 4 or 5 hours and then I'm going to leave. Like, I was able to navigate to get the goods from the family with allowing myself to take care of myself in the thing. There was one time with my husband's and his family, and we had very similar families. It's a big, huge, abrupt thing, and we're like, we're leaving. We're not staying here. This is not good. We'll talk to you guys later, but we're leaving. And you get up, and we left. So there's a way that you have to, if you have to be in connection with people that are not interested in changing and growing, you have to be strong enough to uphold your own boundaries and your own safety. That's your work. So you can call me a fucking son of a bitch, blah, 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 and I'm not going to tolerate it. I'm not going to take it. I'm going to stand up or I'm going to leave. Then I can walk into an environment and know that I've got my back. And that's hard, but that's a first really important step if you have to. Some people choose not to until, then they don't have to. But in certain situations, you have to. But that's why I'm not a fan of the just estrangement. And I know it's not just a moment. There's a lot of bad things that happen that oftentimes get these kids to choose because the parents aren't open and they're not interested. But boundaries and safety are really important.
Now, I think a lot of people are probably quietly hoping for when they start this work is that the person that hurt them will finally see it.
Yes.
They'll finally acknowledge it.
Yes.
They'll finally apologize.
Yeah.
How important is that in the healing process, the acknowledgement?
Yeah. It's important if it can happen. If the person can do that, it can have a huge impact on your healing journey. Timing is really important because if somebody acknowledges wrongdoing before you've done your work, it's not going to land the same way. You're still going to be carrying the hurt and the pain. The acknowledgement doesn't automatically take away all the hurt and the pain. So timing is important. You have to, your father says, I'm so sorry, blah, 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 blah. That's a corrective experience. That can have an impact. And you still have the place in your history that holds the pain. So it's not going to bypass the healing work. Will it help the healing work? Absolutely. Some people get an opportunity to do that. Some people, and I've seen this a lot, when the parent acknowledges, but the person is filled with so much anger and rage, they're not able to receive it at all. So it doesn't matter if the acknowledgement happens if you're actually not open and receptive to receiving it. That's one of the things that happened for me in my life with my dad, is that I actually did enough work to the point that when he acknowledged it, and it wasn't even the biggest acknowledgement in the world. I wasn't the father you needed and wanted, but I always loved you. But I was open and receptive enough to receive that as an apology and acknowledgement and love from him. So it wasn't just that he said it. It was the work that I had done to allow myself to be open and receptive. And then I felt it back for him for the first time in my life. And it was a beautiful moment. It was like, and it was that feeling for and from, right? Could you heal from trauma without getting the acknowledgement? To the degree that you can, yes. Some people don't have the option, right? Does it help if you get that? I think it was an enormous gift that I received that from him, but I also think it may have not landed had I not done my own work.
Yeah, because what's interesting about that to me is like you can be in control of your own healing work, but you can't be in control of their own reaction.
Exactly.
And in fact, some people might get the reverse, which is like they try to bring it up, deny it, minimize it, turn it around on you entirely. Yeah. It's like this gaslighting that happens where it's like,
I experienced a lot of that.
And so what should someone do then? How should they handle that?
That's where I'm going to go back to the boundary thing. That's where, do you have the capacity to not subject yourself to that if it's not healthy, if you're not strong enough, if you can't stand up to it? That's where, I don't want to call it estrangement. I want to call it making a choice to not subject yourself to something where somebody is not open and willing to navigate and negotiate with you in any kind of healthy way. So that's a boundary. It's like, this isn't healthy. This isn't helpful. I'm interested in negotiating with you, but you're not open and receptive to having any kind of real discussion about it. So I'm choosing not to be a part of this anymore. And that's empowering when you could do that, which is different than running away prematurely without actually making an attempt at trying and seeing if the person is open and receptive. Because there's a lot of, Gen Zs that are like estrangement happy, and the parents are desperate for any kind of reconciliation. But kids, they're not even making an attempt like that. That's I'm running away versus I'm choosing to leave because this is a dead end street and I've tried. There's a difference there.
Yeah. And I imagine for some people, it's hard also because there could be the gaslighting and the minimizing, but then it's like, well, this is my father. This is my mother. They're 75 now and they're old and they're going to die. And, all the complicated feelings where my brother has this illness and, so there's this grief of someone who's still alive.
Yes.
And the relationship can't be what you want it to be. And they might be gaslighting around it. Now you've maybe done some work.
Yes, that's right.
And so it's like, do I still accept this complicated, crappy version of them because they're my parent? And, I'm going to accept that. I'm going to be strong enough to still be in contact with them.
That's right. I did that, and I have this image when, my dad was dying and he was failing and I still had unresolved feelings for my history, even though I had done a lot of work. And I remember, I'm like, kids, we're going to visit Grandpa because this is probably the last time you're going to see Grandpa. So, I was very clear and cognizant that I did that. And then, I had to bathe him because he couldn't bathe himself. And I saw this frail. He really, really looked like a concentration camp survivor. He was skin and bones, and I'm helping him into the shower. And it was a moment of compassion. My heart was just full with who this person was now versus who he was then. Because there's a big difference. He was a frail, weak, dying man. And I had compassion for that. But I didn't ignore what I also was holding based on what he did. But that takes a level of capacity to hold then and now. This is why I keep talking about the differentiation. So it's not like, oh, my dad's so wonderful, nothing ever happened. No, I'm not saying that. But there is a reality, like these people are going to be gone. And if you haven't done enough work, you don't have the capacity to see them for who they are today compared to only seeing them through the lens of your history.
Well, I think, the other thing when it comes to the cycle of healing, the full cycle of healing, whether they acknowledge it or not, is how you see yourself and how you see them.
Yep.
And there's a version of this trauma conversation where you see yourself, you went through tremendous harm. I mean, we spent this entire conversation validating that, but you might look at yourself as somewhat morally superior to the person who traumatized you, but like maybe your father, right? Did he come out of his own crib thinking about hitting you in the crib? Like probably not. Like there's probably something that happened to him that produced such vile actions.
100%.
And maybe he didn't get to the point in his healing journey to even recognize that.
That was one of the things that was really empowering. I had what I saw at the end of his life was he was a fragile, frail man who wasn't very strong. I saw the woundedness in him, not only the perpetrator in him that hurt me as a kid. And I saw it was sad that he did not have the capacity that I had, that his life didn't evolve in the ways that mine did. And I felt sorry for him. I really did. I really did. And the thing that was so freeing for me was I could love him. And that was for me and about me. Did he feel my love? Maybe he did. I don't even really know if it landed. But I felt love for him. And I was like, that is how far I've come because I can feel love for somebody who brutally treated me like garbage. That was the ultimate freedom. Like, I will never forget that moment. Will never forget that moment of like loving someone who harmed me. And everybody doesn't have to get there. I'm grateful that I did. It doesn't mean that I still don't get triggered today when somebody's mean to me and I have to speak up, because that still happens. But I'm not carrying my history in the way that I used to carry it. I'm just not. And there was nothing freer than releasing all the pain and the anger and the hatred and the stuff that I carried, and rising above it to a point of love. So I kind of think that's what it's all about. And trauma blocks love, and love heals trauma. Like, that's where I would like us all to get. Do we all have to get there? Not necessarily. Do we get as far as we're willing to go or want to go? Yes. But that's pretty amazing feeling to be unaffected by what happened and to not let it dictate your life or your choices anymore.
What does that mean? If you expound that, trauma blocks love and love heals trauma.
Yeah, it was something that came to me. It's not my phrase, I'll tell you that. It's something that came to me over and over again when I was writing Transcending Trauma. I would, during the pandemic, write. And I'd go for a run and I'd hear trauma blocks love, trauma blocks connection. And then I'd hear it's love and connection that heals trauma. And every time I heard that, it's like, that is exactly the truth. That is what it is. The experiences that we go through block who we are. They make us something different than who we are, which is love and connection. I think we all are. I think evil exists in the world. I totally believe that. But at our core, I think we're all love. We all want love and we all are love. And trauma, bad experiences, bad situations block access to that free-flowing love that I think is in all of us. And I think the way we heal trauma is with love and connection. I don't think it's a model of therapy. I think it's love and connection that heals trauma. So it's this interesting cycle. I kind of feel like, and this is where I get spiritual, I feel like we all come from love. And I think we come into this earth to have a human experience, and we experience a lot of shit. Good shit, bad shit, good shit, bad shit. And I think it's our job to work through that and release that to get back to love, because that's where we come from. So I kind of feel like that's all of our jobs, if you will, here. And some people choose to do more of that than others. And I'm not here to judge anybody, but I want people to know that that's what I'm doing. And that's what I want to teach as many people. Love's so much more powerful than evil. Evil exists. Evil exists. That I didn't want to acknowledge before, but I think it's evil in human form. I think we're capable of doing harmful things. We see it in wars. We see it all over, but love kind of wins.
Now, you've done a tremendous amount of, you're speaking of the spiritual reality, and then you also done a ton of meaning making. In our last interview, I brought up, Lady Gaga's story, partially because I think it's so remarkable. I mean, here's someone who was raped, and then she got fibromyalgia. And then the way that she's speaking about it felt very similar to the way that you speak about it in some ways. And I wanted you to read your quote, because to some people this would just sound absurd, but it has a lot of parallels to things that you've said. And so she said, "I think I realized that I have chronic pain for a reason. And I don't mean to be like God gave it to me, And I also don't believe in the karma thing where you're sick because you did something bad. But I do believe that this happened for a reason. All the things that I've been through, I think they were supposed to happen. I was supposed to go through this, even the rape, all of it. And I think it happened because God was saying to me, I'm going to show you the pain, and then you're going to help other people who are in pain because you're going to understand it. So, my practice and my commitment is to gratitude. Even in the midst of the chronic pain, I do this all the time. I will be laying on my porch crying and I will say, thank you, God, for this pain. Thank you. I surrender it to you. This pain is meant for me and my body right now. I'm here in this moment and I'm learning. Thank you for teaching me. So there's this acceptance, there's this gratitude, there's this meaning making that's happening.
Totally.
When you hear a quote like that, what runs through you?
A lot of emotion, because that's what I believe. Nobody's ever, I never put myself in comparison to Lady Gaga ever, but I totally resonate with that quote. I live my life that way. I think she's a guided individual and she's been put on this planet to have global impact. And I feel kind of humbled and honored to be on a similar journey as her, because everything that she said in that quote is the way I lived my life and is what I believe in and is what I am here in my small way to teach the world also. I know I was supposed to be abused the way I was abused. I would not be where I would not be where I am had I not gone through what I went through, but also worked my ass off to get beyond it too. It's not just the trauma that's the lesson. It's also doing the work to learn from it, to evolve from it, to rise above it, and then to do something meaningful with it. And I'm doing that. And that feels really good.
That's amazing. I mean, I think a lot of people can't imagine that, but then you went through this whole healing process and to get to the other side. Yeah. You said you can't fully heal your trauma. You're still going to be, activated or triggered in some ways. Yeah. But in some ways, what you're just saying almost feels better in a sense of it
is
of like this rich sense of meaning that you have on the other side and that possibility available to the average person no matter what they've been through.
Yeah, because how sad it would be if I was done, healed, gone, all done. Like each time something shows up, I do rise to a different vibration of awareness and learning. Like healing is an evolution. It's an evolution, and it just I'm experiencing something right now where it's like, like being kind when being hated, and it's like. That's a new thing I'm learning right now, right? And that's something that showed up in my life. And I was like, why is this here? What do I need to learn? And I was like, oh, I need to learn to be kind when I'm hated. And I was like, that's a whole different level of something that's different than forgiving someone who harmed me, right? So that's a current life lesson that I'm in. So it's kind of always growing and evolving.
Yeah.
And so I think we're all doing that. Like I'm not better. Have I been working at it longer than some people? Yeah, I'm old and I'm always doing my work, but I think we're all, wherever you're at on your journey and on your level, we're all learning and hopefully growing or choosing not to grow in our experiences. I think that's kind of why we're here.
Well, my last question is for the person listening who feels so far from where you're at right now, maybe they've been sitting this whole conversation and either recognizing themselves for the first time, or maybe they're exhausted for carrying this for years.
Yeah.
Like, what would you most want them to know?
Well, totally that healing's possible. Like totally. Like, maybe I had such an extreme thing to show people that it is possible. I don't know. I don't know if that's the reason, but I want everybody in the world to know this is possible, that you can get better. You can release this stuff that you're carrying that isn't yours, and you can have a better quality of life and more authentic, full of more love. Like, I truly believe that every single person is capable of that. And I want to just reach as many people as possible to say, keep going, keep doing it, keep going. It's possible. It's possible. It's possible.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for being here once again with us.
Thank you for having me. It's always a pleasure, and it's always emotional and overwhelming in good ways.
Yeah.